Hello and welcome to the 100 Acre Wool Knitting Podcast. My name is Bella, and on this channel I usually post podcasts about what I'm knitting and what I'm making, but today's video is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about how I block my woolen garments. So that was a popular request by you guys, and I thought I would go over that today to show you my preferred method of blocking my woolen knitted pieces. So today is going to be a little tutorial style, and I hope it is helpful for you. So I am not saying this is how you have to do this. There are tons of ways to block your garments, or you don't even have to block them at all. So today is just going to be what I do personally. And I learned some of these techniques from Marie Woolen and also Alice Starmore. I'm kind of utilizing some of their techniques that they have talked about in the past of how they block their woolen garments, but I've also done some other different things as well. So I'm going to show you what I personally do today. So today you are going to need some tools to get you started. You're going to need some sort of a steam source. So I'm going to use my iron today. It has a steam setting because we're going to need to steam our knitting. So you're going to need like either a hand steamer or steam iron. You're also going to need some distilled water. I always use distilled water for this because our water here in California can be really hard, and I don't want any sort of like calcium buildup or anything on my knitting, so I just go for distilled. I think it's also better for the iron. So water for the steam. And then I'm also going to use a spray bottle today. This is just a little plant mister, but I use it all the time to kind of spray my knitting. This is also just filled with distilled water. And you're going to need some sort of blocking mats. You don't have to use blocking mats. You can just, whatever you're going to be blocking your piece on, you're going to need to get that ready. And then you also need the knitting that you're going to be blocking. So I have some examples of kind of what I'm thinking you would use this blocking method for. I don't do this for all of my types of knitting or all types of wools that I use. If I'm using a superwash wool or anything with like alpaca or silk or any kind of blended yarn, I do a different kind of blocking. Today is only going to be focused on pure wool yarns. So for example, this is a swatch for one of my projects, the Yell Cardigan by Marie Woolen, and this is 100% Shetland wool, very toothy woolen wool. This one is also another swatch that I did, Jamieson & Smith. It's 100% wool, so that's what we're going to be going over today. Nothing with any sort of blend of other materials in it. So let's get started. So your first step is going to be warm up your iron or whatever steam source you're going to be using. So for your iron, you definitely want to put it on the wool setting or probably medium. So on my iron here, it says wool, and then it also has two little dots. So that's what I'm going to be using today. And we're going to get our blocking mats ready to go. So I'm just going to be, to make this simpler and easier, not so much going on, I'm just going to be blocking this swatch for you today, so it's not as cumbersome. So I'm going to use T-pins. You don't have to use T-pins, especially if what you're blocking doesn't need to be stretched at all. If it's exactly the size that you want or need it to be already, and you're not going to be stretching anything, then you don't need T-pins, but I'm going to be doing that today. So first step is you want to measure according to your pattern or whatever however large you want the piece to be. You're going to want to T-pin it exactly to that size. So this was just like a 4x4 inch swatch that I had done for my Anne Boleyn jacket, and so I'm just going to block it out to about that size. I'm not measuring here, but obviously if you want your piece to be an exact size, you'll want to measure it. And just to say real quick, the blocking mats that I'm using today, these are from Knit IQ, I believe they're called. I will also link them down in the description below this video. But they are really great. I really love these because they have inch grid lines already on there for you, so you don't have to necessarily get a measuring tape out and measure everything. You can just look at your board and, you know, count how many inches your piece is. It saved me a lot of time before when you're blocking out a bunch of things that are, you know, a bunch of pieces that you're going to be seaming up. Yeah, it can really save some time and make things easier on you. So now I have my T-pins in and we are ready to start blocking. This is a mostly dry blocking process, so we're mostly going to be using steam, a little bit of water. Oh, I also forgot to say, you're going to need a towel too, so we'll get into that next. But first, you have your iron hot and ready, or medium hot and ready, and you're going to want to put it to the steam setting. So I'm going to turn on the steam now. I already have water in this, and so now you're just going to want to kind of hover over your knitting and steam it. This is going to be kind of fiddly because I have some T-pins on the edges, but when you're working with a larger piece, it'll be easier to do that. And you definitely want to get over the edges of the piece to make sure that you get all of the edges and everything's getting blocked out evenly. Don't just stay in the middle of what you're blocking. And I'm having continuous steam going. And then this iron actually also has a function of you can kind of press steam, if that makes sense. You can do a burst of steam, that's what I mean. So I also do some bursts just to really get the steam in there and get it very much in the fabric. So you definitely don't want to press on your knitting, or if you do touch your knitting with the bottom of the iron, make sure you don't press too hard because it is an iron. It could iron your knitting flat unless you want that look, but this has bobbles, so I wouldn't even want to do that. So I'm just hovering as close as I can to the top of the knitting, but not touching it. So I just do that and kind of hover in the same spots for a little while so you know the steam is getting through, but not too long. And then I think that's probably good. So I can turn the steam off now. And that should be still kind of warm to the touch, but it'll dissipate pretty quickly. So your next step is going to be to wet a towel completely damp. Wring it out so it's not dripping water, but you do want it quite damp. And then we're going to lay it on top of the piece here. So I'm just going to pretend that this is soaking wet and damp. So all you're going to want to do is just lay it on top of your knitting. And I also like to kind of tuck it in so that it's really touching all of the surface of the knitting. And you're going to leave that. Just leave it, don't touch it. Do this in a place that you can leave it for a while. Leave it until the towel is completely dry. So this is going to also kind of steam, create some moisture underneath so that your knitting is getting some moisture but not too much water. Also, I wanted to say the reason that I do this is that I have heard that you don't want your woolen pieces to have too much water in them. It kind of messes with the texture of the wool and kind of flattens it a bit. And I really like to keep all the beautiful built-in loftiness and beauty of wool yarns. So that's why we want to use as little water as possible, but we still want to block it out. So once you come back and it's all dry, for me, in the past that I've done this, it's taken a few days, 2 or 3 days for it to be completely dry. It'll probably depend on where you live and how humid your atmosphere is, but for me it takes about 2 or 3 days for that portion to be done. And then at that point you can just be done with it. From my experience, what I have noticed is that if I'm trying to block something that I don't have to stretch a lot, if my tension isn't too tight and it's kind of already in the size that I want it to be, then I kind of just stop there. But for the things that I've knit that my tension was a bit too tight and I was really blocking something out, really stretching it, and I wanted it to stay stretched, then I have found that doing this next step just kind of sets it in much more. So in order to do that, if you want to really stretch out your piece and make sure it stays stretched as much as possible, then I will get the spray bottle involved. So this is distilled water again. So all you're going to do is spray your piece with not too much water, but enough that the top layer is pretty much dampened. You don't want so much water that this would be sopping wet, but we're just trying to get it nicely damp. And don't worry about, at least these blocking mats, I can't say for any other ones, but these blocking mats, what I'm doing right now, it doesn't damage them at all. It doesn't make the ink bleed or spread or anything, so do not worry about that. Okay, so now it is pretty well dampened, and then I'm going to go back with my steam iron, put it back on the steam setting, and I'm going to go over it once again, just like I did the first time. So I'm just going to push some steam through there, do some steam bursts, and just really get that moisture in there. And this step you don't have to do a lot, because there already is a lot of water on there. So just a little bit. And if there is some drips, you can just dab that up. Alrighty, so once you've done that, then that is pretty much it. Then you just wait for it to dry again. You wait for your knitting to completely dry out. Could be a day or so. And then from my experience, what I have noticed after that is once it's completely dry and once I take out the T-pins, it stays exactly to that measurement and it doesn't really fluctuate much. So yeah, and that's about it. If you do decide to try out this method on your wool yarns, your wool knitting, please let me know. I would love to see how it turns out for you. And also if you have any blocking tips, if you have a different method of doing this for woolen yarns, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear how other people block their knits, and if they even block their knits. Do you even block your knitting? Would love to know. So I hope this was helpful for you, and if it was, please do like and subscribe to this channel. I do post knitting podcasts and also tutorials. So I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!